We're live. Okay, so my name is Lane Goldszer, and I'm a librarian in the Adult and Teen Services Department at Glendale Library, Arts and Culture. Today is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021. As part of our Pride Month celebration and our Be the Change series on inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism, I will be interviewing Johnny Donovan, a member of local group Glendale Out. We're collecting these stories as part of our community collections project in order to document Glendale's unique LGBTQIA culture and history to help inspire diversity and inclusion and create a sense of community that has not been publicly visible for the past several decades. Johnny Donovan is a gay man who grew up in Northern California and currently lives in Glendale. Johnny is an active member of Glendale Out, a grassroots LGBTQIA organization. As a queer group, Glendale Out is committed to integrating the diverse LGBTQIA community into the broader Glendale narrative through political action, community building, and social connection. Thank you for joining us, Johnny.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. So, first of all, if you could just tell us your name, your pronouns. I guess we already said your name a bunch of times. Your pronouns, any parts of your identity that you want to mention briefly, and how long you've lived in Glendale.
Of course. No, I always love being in the spotlight. So again, my name is Johnny, and yes, I am a member of the grassroots organization. It's the local queer group, Glendale Out. And as you said, we are committed to telling the story of Glendale's gay people and obviously queer people and everyone involved. And the thing is that when you talk about the gay history of Glendale, sometimes it's not something that often comes up, or, you might think of other cities like San Francisco or New York that have that longer story that they can tell. And that's the whole point, is that sometimes we feel like the city, although we love it, our queer story wasn't seen as something that was important enough to be recorded or to be documented. And it's not true that gay people didn't exist in Glendale all these years. And there was a exhibit, and you'll have to pardon me, I don't really remember the name of it, unfortunately, but it was in Reflex Space, and it is these documented photos of these amazing gay parties that were happening here in Glendale. And so it's the fact that someone out there saw it in hindsight, hey, we should be documenting this. And so now we're the next group who's doing this, and we are documenting all the amazing things that are happening in Glendale, whether that is peace walks or pride or whatever it might be. And so we're telling the queer story of Glendale. And I myself am a new resident of Glendale. I haven't been here long. It was late in 2019 that I had moved from Orange County, and I was going to start a brand new experience. There was going to be so many amazing things in the future. And then COVID happened. So I spent quarantine in Glendale, but it's okay because of all the connections that I had made. I was able to connect with friends and make new friends and meet Glendale Out. So there were lots of positives that had happened. And I think I forgot my pronouns, but I do go by he, him pronouns.
Great. And then if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about how you grew up and any other part of your identity that you want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. So I think you had mentioned it before. I grew up in Northern California, in a city outside of Sacramento. It's called Stockton. So if anyone else knows where that is.
Oh yeah.
My story in Stockton is a fun one, and I have always been close, especially to my grandparents. And that is actually the story of also my coming out. And when I was a child, my family was always very accepting. And my stepmom loves to tell the story that she, may have thought, oh, well, you know what? He seems a little fabulous. But it was at age 3 that I confirmed it for her. And it was because of The Little Mermaid. When it came out, there's those characters that you want to just emulate. But then there was Ariel, and I wanted to be Ariel. But there were so many aspects to the story. And you can also say Hans Christian Andersen probably was a queer writer as well. And so when he was writing this story, it most likely had a queer focus, a queer love story. But as a kid, I didn't really know all that. But it was the fact that I had identified with the main character, Ariel, who feels like a fish out of water, like she doesn't really belong. And of course, she meets this amazing over-the-top drag queen witch. And so I've met a few of those along my route as well. And, she has the handsome prince, and it was just everything that I wanted as a kid. So as a little 3-year-old boy, I knew I wanted to be that Disney princess and find my Prince Charming and have all those amazing experiences, complete with little sidekick of a best friend, which I do have. And he always gets mad at me and he'll tell me he's not a guppy. I say, well, you act like Flounder sometimes. But the thing is that as children, I think that our personalities really come through in the way that we do things. And for instance, when I was young, I would dress up, I would put a t-shirt over my head and I would throw it back as if it was a wig, or I would roll up my shirt as if it was a bikini top to be Ariel. And I was essentially doing drag performances at age 3. And I've always loved to entertain as well. So that was something that was part of my genetics very early on. And so growing up in Northern California, I suppose it's kind of the region as well. It's very Christian. So I did grow up in a religious household. And so even though my family never really had any quarrels, typically, there was a few moments, whether it was when I was playing with dolls or when I was dressing up in certain situations. But I think overall, I felt like I was accepted. And yet I still waited until I was 18 to come out officially. And whether that was because I thought, well, I want to wait to be proactive in case the worst happens, in case I'm kicked out, in case I'm disowned. I want to be able to be on my own and to be officially an adult and not worry about having, to go between households or whatever it might be. And I know a lot of queer teens struggle with just that very fact. And I'm very lucky that nothing happened per se. And I think that many kids out there, are wondering, well, what do I do, or where do I go? And it breaks my heart that they're in that situation. But I can say, I know what the anxiety feels like, so I can definitely understand that regard. But that's really my growing up, and talking about Disney, that's what brought me to Southern California, is that I really wanted to work for the Walt Disney Company. And so the first boyfriend and we moved down here, we packed everything up when we were 18 years old and started to work at Disneyland. And that's really what brought me to Southern California. But
that's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And of course, I made a lot of friends and had a lot of great experiences, but that also helped me to understand what I want to do professionally. And it helped me to mold my interests and to help me to also understand, okay, when you just say, I want to work for a certain company, well, why or what aspect of that? I think that so many kids just have this vague idea of what they want to do and they don't really, know exactly what's involved in that career.
So, and then after moving down here and getting involved with Disney, I saw that you were doing diversity and outreach work for Disney.
I did, yes.
And I wonder if that also informs your work with Glendale Out, because I know you do a lot of outreach. You've been so helpful for us at the library as a key person to talk to. And I also wonder, do you know what the history of Glendale Out is, or how did you find them, and what made you feel like, okay, this is an organization that aligns with my values, or how did you become involved with them?
Right. So exactly as you said, I did start my diversity work with Disney, and it is a business resource group. So they were called diversity resource groups at the time, but that also kind of gives the idea that they're a place for, employees to go to for resources per se. It was more of a business segment where, people who identified as queer, who also worked for the company, could come together. And so that's Disney Pride. And what I found that I truly have a passion for was, one, obviously being involved with the community, but also event organization. I love organizing events. And so with Disney Pride, we were able to work with the Long Beach Pride Parade. We also worked with the Los Angeles Pride Parade, working with the Disney stores and the Walt Disney Studios and Disneyland Park, and working all together to create different events and to host different offerings for whether it's cast members or being part of like the gay days at Disneyland. Although that's not an official day by the company, we still worked with the people who put it on. So we would attend their like galas or their launch events and things like that. Also, there's the Trevor Project as well. I attended a couple of dining galas for that and benefits and just being part of that community. While I loved what I did at Disney sometimes, it was really those kind of extracurricular experiences that really solidified my love for being part of the diverse culture of Los Angeles. And so afterwards, when I left Disney and I was doing other things, as I had mentioned, I grew up in a religious household, and I am still religious. I'm still Christian, and I go to a local church. It's Glendale City Church, is a Seventh-day Adventist church, and they are so accepting. They actually recently were they're the ones who did it, the Peace Walk, the Martin Luther King Jr. Peace Walk of Glendale. They were the organizers for it, along with a lot of other organizations, and Glendale Out was also one of the sponsors for this as well. But at the church, I have a couple of friends who like to joke around and they say, well, the back pews were the purple pews or the lavender pews, and that's where all the queer people of Glendale would sit. And they talk about the fact that there was so many, queer people at the time that were attending this church. And I just had never really heard that before. And hearing about the history of the church, and even back to the 50s when, divorced women weren't really accepted in society, Glendale City Church was accepting them. And so one of the pastors there, Pastor Todd, he really connected with me. And I was introduced to a couple of people, and one of them, his name is Dave. Later, I found out that Dave was part of Glendale Out. And so Dave invited me and said, I think that you might enjoy this. Why don't you come join one of our meetings and just kind of see what you think? So I said, okay. So I messaged one of the founders. You asked about the history. So Gray is one of the founders of Glendale Out. I know that it started a while back, and I think that it kind of just slowed down and it wasn't as involved, and then it just kind of picked up speed again. So I'm not 100% certain on the official start or dates or anything like that, but at least from my part, I know that we've been working and being part of the community for about 2 years now. And so if you look at their social media, Glendale Out on Instagram and on Facebook, you can see a couple of their posts and things that they've posted throughout 2019 and now 2020, 2021, etc. And so with Glendale Out, they gave me the opportunity to work again with the community, something that I hadn't done since I had quit Disney. And so that's really why I was like, I'm so about this. You are talking about working on a Glendale City Pride, you're asking to be partners with local businesses, with city officials, things like this, and to basically celebrate the diversity of the city. I'm all on board. So for June Pride, so we named it Jewel City Pride. So that's the official name for 2021. And what our idea is that we were going to connect with the local businesses and ask them first, hey, what things are you doing for Pride? How can we help support you? And we will not only share this information with our core group of followers and our email list, but we will also attend and we'll be part of that celebration as well. So we divided up everything and we were given the official name Fairy Ambassador. So I am the Fairy Ambassador of the Glendale Library Arts and Culture. So I'm super excited to be your Fairy Ambassador, right?
You have been an amazing Fairy Ambassador.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So as you said, in working with the library team, it's really helping to promote the offerings that you guys were already going to do or to help inspire new ones. And one of those is our queer art, Queering Glendale. I think that's the name. That could be the working title, but that is the art show that's also coming to the Reflex space in Central Library as well. So lots of fun things. We have story time with Pickle the drag queen coming up. We also have an author conversation and just lots of fun things happening at the library. So I know we will be sharing that on our social media, and of course the library will also be sharing all that information as well. But again, that's why I do what I do, is because like the story time with Pickle, we have an opportunity to have a drag queen read to kids. Like, how awesome is that? And the fact that the parents are bringing their kids to these events. So it just makes me happy. I love it. I love the diversity and I love working with people.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I think that covers it for today. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention or bring up? I was going to ask you about events that you're excited about, but you're already there. So
well, thank you. I try to be efficient in that regard. No, like I said, right now, if I'm representing myself, I am on social media. If anyone is interested in following my own personal diary, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, it's Gay Man's Diary. So that's my social media handle. And at least for Glendale Out, if you're interested in following them as well, Glendale Out is on Instagram and also Facebook, Glendale Out. And yeah, I mean, our upcoming events include working at the Galleria. We're going to be having offerings at the Museum of Neon Art. We're working with the library for events. We also have some upcoming Zoom. So it's lots of things. So make sure to stay tuned to the Glendale Out page and of course the library page as well for June offerings for Jewel City Pride of 2021.
Thank you, Johnny. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you around Glendale soon.
Definitely. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And happy Pride to everyone.